Hi, I'm Kirk Duckwall here with your Twin Cities Real Estate Agent News Update for December 2025. All right, in this update, we're going to be covering the changes in showing activity that we're seeing, as well as a delisting trend. Also, be touching on the NAR stats for sales forecasts, as well as our own Twin Cities market EKG and forecasts for 2026. However, before we get to that, I do want to promote a class that's open and free to all Twin Cities real estate agents, and that is the Art and Science of Showing a Home. This is a 2-hour free CE class that will be held in St. Paul. There's going to be a link if you receive this via email or down in the YouTube video below as well to sign up for that. All right, let's dive into what's going on here in our Twin Cities market. All right, first off, looking at the showing data for last week, Thanksgiving week, we watched the average showings per listing. Now, this is for homes priced between 250 and 500K, so kind of in that median price range. The average showings per listing dropped from 2.71 down to 2.23. This is in comparison to last year's 2.82 over the same time, so down 21%. We also watched the showing activity drop, not a big surprise there, for Thanksgiving week, 2126 down to 1303. This is in comparison to last year's 1778, so down 16% there. We do expect that the showing numbers to jump back up, probably near or slightly above 2,000 as we go into the current week we're in here. As far as total showing activity, we are tracking slightly ahead of last year. 136,018 in comparison to last year's 133,195. All right, taking a look at a few other trends in our marketplace. Now, this is coming out of the Minneapolis Association of Realtors data through InfoSparks. A little bit of a more downtrend is the closed sales for November come in at 3209. So this is actually behind last year's 3470 and the year before 3307. On the brighter side, though, we are seeing pending sales not as far behind. So 3,038 and last year 3,146. But if we go back to 2023, it was actually lower than that. So we are seeing some positive notes there as well. The bond market is seeing a little bit of fluctuation over the last few days. However, we have been holding this pretty close trend almost back to mid-September on the bond market between 4 and about 4.1, 4.15, which is leading to interest rates that right around 6.25, a little bit above, a little bit below on the 30-year mortgage. Okay, in other news, we're talking and looking at delistings. I mentioned a trend going on there. So we're seeing the highest delisting rate, and this is from Blueprint News in the US, the highest delisting rate that we've seen since 2016. That said, a majority of these sellers are people that have purchased in the last 5 years and don't really want to drop their prices and would rather just keep their lower interest rates. Also, forecasts. NAR is expecting, if rates can approach 6% based on talk of Fed cuts, we could see growth of 14% in those closed sales. So based on that previous news, that's quite a positive for us here in the Twin Cities. So if we could see that, yeah, we could see sale price or total home sales jump. And when we look at the market meter, we see something similar in our forecast we'll get to here in just a second. However, if we see rates holding closer to that 6.25 mark, we may see sales hold in similar trends. All right, looking at that market EKG. Now, some of these stats we just covered, which was the showing activity dropping off, but let's touch on some of these others. So the mortgage purchase index, we saw a really nice jump here week over week, which is positive news because this is a leading indicator of mortgage applications. We have seen activity improve as we saw this little spike here for a while. Foreclosures, this is tracking Hennepin County, up ever so slightly week over week. We are coming off of our high on inventory, so we peaked out on inventory around September 28th with about 10,897 listings, and now we're down to 9,994. Cancellation rate here in the Twin Cities, 4 weeks running at 7%, watching the average days on market up to 39.6, and then we get to our market meter at a 2.75. So this is in seller's territory. It's been there for a little while. So basically the scale, anything below 4 is seller's market, 4 to 6 is stable market, 6 to 8 buyer's market, and strong buyer's market, or extremely strong buyer's market if you go 8 or higher. So talking about that market meter here, we can see, blow that up here a little bit, we can see that we are probably hitting the lowest point of the year. This is pretty normal. We can see we got down to a 2.65 on that market meter, and we've been coming up. We expect it to probably start to continue to rise into December, which is pretty normal as people the last few years have been trying to take advantage of the market before it gets to the extreme spring market conditions. However, we are looking to come out of the hole pretty quick here. That's a little motor boat term there. When you punch the throttle, accelerating, getting up on step there. That's what we are looking at for our market this year. We can see looking at 1221 and then getting, by the time we get into early January, already in stable market, by end of or middle of January approaching seller's market, and by the very beginning of February we're in that seller's market and beyond range. So it could be a very, very strong market for sellers out there. So what do we have for advice? Really looking at, for sellers, if you're on the market, advising those sellers on the market currently to hold the course or pull their listing. I wouldn't be doing massive price drops right now unless they absolutely have to move the home, because we are looking, based on showing activity, the trends that we're seeing, that things may pick up quite quickly here in another 30 days. So holding tight on that or pulling it off the market and doing a relist in that mid-January timeline. For buyers, you have this little bit of window of opportunity. I think they can be taking advantage of that higher days on market, kind of doing the deal picking out there. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. Again, I want to promote that class coming up here on the 16th. That is at noon, 2-hour CE class open to all agents in St. Paul. We'll have a link for signing up for that. If you have any questions, again, my name is Kirk Duckwall. I'm a broker owner at Bricks Real Estate, as well as I write and teach continuing ed courses about a lot of this data stuff that we just went over. Please feel free to reach out. I'll have my contact information down below or in the email. Take care, and we'll see you next month.